Welcome back to Bible Shorts, episode 132, Genesis chapter 2. In our last two episodes, we looked at the creation story that begins in chapter 1 of Genesis, the first book in our Bibles. A world created using the framework of 1 week, so it can end with the creation on the seventh day of the day that God rested, blessed, and called holy. The creation story in Genesis chapter 1 contrasts with one of the most famous creation epics from other peoples of the ancient world, a creation epic from Babylon known by its opening words, Enuma Elish, the first words of the book. And it fills 7 big clay tablets. Clay tablets with this story on them that archaeologists have found everywhere across the Middle East. Enuma Elish says, before the formation of heaven and earth, nothing existed but 2 water gods who had children, and those offspring created more gods. Until Tiamat, one of the original water gods, was defeated in fierce battle by a younger god called Marduk, who sliced the monster Tiamat in 2 and created the dome above and the earth below with the 2 halves of her body. The Babylonian story continues with Marduk putting some of the gods in the sky as the sun, the moon, and the stars. But after they complained, Marduk created a human being to serve them. They were so grateful, the gods built Marduk a ziggurat in Babylon where he could be worshipped. And while the Babylonian story ends with the creation of that temple to Marduk, holiness in physical space, the 7th day of the Genesis story ends with the establishment of holiness in time, Shabbat, the Sabbath, the 7th day of the week. Unlike the ancient Greeks or Chinese, the ancient Israelites didn't write complicated explanations about the nature of the universe and humans. They and the Babylonians and other ancient cultures in the Near East explain things in stories. So, immediately following creation in 7 days in chapter 1 of Genesis, they have a completely different creation story. And that's okay, because there are often multiple creation stories in ancient Near Eastern cultures. For example, in Egypt, there are at least 5, each with a different god creating people or the world. So let's look at what Genesis chapter 2 tells us in its second creation story. And note, it possibly could have come from a different source or was first written in a different time. In chapter 1 of Genesis, the word for God is Elohim. Here in chapter 2, he is Lord God, Yahweh Elohim. So the text begins, in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, when no plant of the field was yet in the earth, and no vegetation of the field had yet sprung up, for the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was no man to till the ground. Then the Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground. The word translated as the man is Adam in Hebrew. Later the will be removed and Adam will be his name. The word translated as dust of the ground is Adamah. Adamah means good soil, the kind you use in a garden to grow things. It's a pun. God has made Adam from the Adamah. So here's a recipe for creating people. Step 1. Form man from Adamah. Step 2. The Lord God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. This is very similar to many ancient creation stories from Babylon all the way back to the Sumerians. People are created out of soil or clay, and then the gods either spit into the clay or the blood of the god is mixed with the clay. But in Genesis, it is God's breath of life. The meaning of all these ancient creation stories is exactly the same as the one in Genesis 2. A human being is two things. A human being is material, because we share much with nature and with animals, but a human being also has a divine element. A human is both physical and spiritual. But neither the Israelites nor Babylonians would ever phrase it like that, though. They express ideas in pictures, pictures you see from stories. And the Lord God planted a garden in Eden, in the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Out of the ground the Lord God made to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, with the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So then the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. So we see in this story, the man has a job. Take care of the garden. Well, in Genesis 1, there were fancy words like dominion. Genesis 2 is just down to basics. And the Lord God commanded the man, "You may freely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat it you shall die." Okay, this sounds like a warning to me. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper as his partner." Other translations say, "I will make him a suitable helper," or "I'll make him a helpmate." So out of the ground the Lord God formed every animal of the field and every bird of the air, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called every living creature, that was its name. You have to understand the importance of the name in ancient Near Eastern culture. Naming something decrees its purpose and its destiny. In Babylonian creation stories, there's a Sumerian god of wisdom named Enki, and in a couple of them, Enki names plants, people, or regions and decrees their purpose and destiny. In Genesis 2, it's a man, not a god, who does this. Human beings who are made in God's image, uniquely endowed with dignity, honor, and infinite worth, into whose hands God has entrusted mastery of his creation. The man gave names to all cattle and to the birds of the air and to every animal of the field. But for the man there was not found a helper as his partner. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and he slept, and then he took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man he made into a woman and brought her to the man. Then the man said, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. The one shall be called woman, for out of man this one was taken." Here's another pun in Hebrew. The word here translated as man is ish, and the word for woman is isha. And then the last two verses of chapter 2. "Therefore a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh. But the two of them were naked, the man and his wife, yet they felt no shame." So come back and look for Bible Shorts episode 133 in 2 weeks. Genesis chapter 3. There's trouble in the garden.